Hello, welcome to the program. I'm your host, Ron Whitlaw. Now, if you're concerned about your job and the economy, especially here in the Triangle area, from Corpus Christi, Laredo South to Brownsville, we're going to let you know why the completion of Interstate 69, fast-tracking that highway, especially connecting 37, completing it, extending it from the Port of Corpus Christi to the Port of Brownsville. We're going to engage you in that discussion so the policymakers will understand. On the program, you can see as my guest, Carlos Masso, who is chairman of the Brownsville Navigation District, and Eddie Campirano, who's the director of the Port of Brownsville. Eddie, Carlos, thank you for joining us. First of all, Democratic presidential candidate Barack Obama's plans to renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement called NAFTA, while, as he says, using the hammer of opting out of that treaty or simply otherwise tearing it up, completely negates and makes negative his coattails to incumbent Democrats running for re-election in Corpus Christi, Laredo, and the Rio Grande Valley. Now, this triangular region between the Rio Grande and Nueces rivers, the Gulf of Mexico, and the state of Tamaulipas, Mexico, which is known as the first generational out-of-Mexico Latino family homeland, has boomed economically since President Bill Clinton initiated NAFTA about 15 years ago. Now, powerful El Paso Congressman Silvestre Reyes is brave enough to tell me he's opposed to Barack Obama's plan to renegotiate NAFTA.
In terms of NAFTA, in the last 10, 12 years, is greatly diversify our economy in the El Paso area. I think that is the key, not just in El Paso, but all along the border. It just makes good economic sense. I do not think that revisiting the whole issue of the North American Free Trade Agreement would be a good idea at this time.
I continue to ask that Barack Obama himself or his campaign co-chair, Federico Pena, or any other surrogate of the Obama campaign, tell me exactly what his plans are and clarify their positions on where they stand on the NAFTA Economic Trade Pact, which has brought so many jobs, so much economic prosperity to South Texas, the nation, and Mexico. Latino voters began to fear more for their jobs and the South Texas economy recently after watching the final presidential debate when John McCain, who supports NAFTA, CAFTA, and free trade pacts generally, challenged Barack Obama on the issue. Here's their exchange.
When Senator Obama said he would unilaterally renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement, the Canadians said, yeah, and we'll sell our oil to China. You don't tell countries you're going to unilaterally renegotiate agreements with them. I am a free trader, and we need to have education and training programs for displaced workers that work, going to our community colleges.
I believe in free trade, but I also believe that for far too long, certainly during the course of the Bush administration with the support of Senator McCain, the attitude's been that any trade agreement is a good trade agreement. And NAFTA did not have enforceable labor agreements and environmental agreements, and what I said was we should include those and make them enforceable. In the same way that we should enforce rules against China manipulating its currency to make our exports more expensive and their exports to us cheaper, we've got to have a president who's going to be advocating on behalf of American businesses and American workers, and I make no apology for that. The important point is we've got to have a president who understands the benefits of free trade, but also is going to enforce unfair trade agreements and is going to stand up to other countries.
Joining us on the set, political guru Tony Knopp. Tony, what did you learn from watching Barack Obama and John McCain go at it neck to neck on NAFTA and free trade?
It's the same argument that's been going on between Republicans and Democrats in general, although, as you point out, it's more difficult for some of those in South Texas, the Democrats that is, to take Barack Obama's position. And one thing I'd like to point out, I think at one point, one of Obama's spokesmen, well, not a spokesman, representative, was talking to a Canadian after Obama had taken this position about renegotiating NAFTA, and the person representing Obama indicated that Well, this was primarily campaign fodder. In other words, that he was making these positions at this time, but when the election was over, that there was really not a serious intent to renegotiate NAFTA.
So basically he would be pandering to his union base.
Well, exactly. It's very important. The unions are strongly against NAFTA, and they regard it as one of the things that is undercut them and has weakened the union positions in the United States.
So did Barack Obama, in his explanation and his counter back to John McCain, clarify enough in your mind what his plans are for NAFTA or not?
Well, when you're talking about environmental conditions and work conditions, this is kind of vague stuff.
That's a catch-all to do whatever you want to, basically.
Exactly.
Now, we talked to Mayor Richard Cortez, City of McAllen, who is ranked #1 in job creation, in home ownership, home financing, home construction across the nation. This is what he had to say about any potential change in the NAFTA free trade agreement by Barack Obama if he were to win the presidency.
When you start talking about quality of life for families, and family values are very important, but you can't take care of your families without economics being on your side. So when you're dealing with something that's going to hurt us to support our families, you bet it's important.
So for Barack Obama to renegotiate NAFTA or opt out of NAFTA, you think would be a serious mistake?
I think it would have a very harmful effect not only on our region here in the Rio Grande Valley and really along the coast and along the corridor, the trade corridors of the United States.
Now, you heard Mayor Rich Cortez say, as we've had other economists on the program in recent weeks, explain that it would be horrible for it to be changed by a President Obama. Would not be expected to be changed by a President McCain because he's already said he would like to expand, improve, and enhance NAFTA rather than change it.
Yes, clearly McCain is committed to free trade. He's made that point abundantly clear. The Obama factor is makes people in South Texas somewhat nervous, I think, because we're heading into a recession, apparently, if we're not already in one, and to restrict in some way our economic interaction with other countries, especially Mexico at this time, would be devastating, I think, for the Valley and for the South Texas.
Beginning of the program today, we explained to you that there are some incumbents in the Rio Grande Valley and Laredo Corpus Christi on the Democratic ballot who are somewhat concerned about Barack Obama being at the top and being a little bit non-committal as to really what he intends to do with the NAFTA free trade agreement. He's talked about trying to force a renegotiation with Mexico and Canada and to have the hammer option of opting out of that agreement. Pretty scary when you talk about the current economic situation. We did talk to one of these incumbents who may be challenged by her Republican on the issue, Democrat Veronica Gonzalez, state representative. Here's how she distances herself from Obama by sharing with you and I her position on the NAFTA free trade agreement.
I'm not so sure that whether or not they decide to vote for Barack Obama is going to ultimately influence their vote for me. But with respect to Senator Obama, I do believe that NAFTA is critical for our area. I think it's created a lot of jobs, and we want to see that job growth continue. I'm not so sure that he'd say all the way that he is not going to support NAFTA. I don't think he has said that. I think he's looking for a way to make sure that workers are receiving good wages and that he's looking for a way to make sure that there's some environmental protections there. And I think that we are all conscious of that and environmental protections throughout our country. So I'm not so sure that's inconsistent, but I do think that NAFTA has been good in creating jobs down here.
Now, we did offer equal time to State Representative Veronica Gonzalez's Republican opponent, and he declined to appear at the appointed hour to record his response. He did tell me, however, that he is having people come over from the Democratic-leaning vote to the Republican Party and a vote for him and John McCain because they see and sense on the part of Barack Obama's comments seem to infer that he might be willing to sacrifice Latino families' jobs related to NAFTA for union jobs in the northeast portion of the United States. Tony?
Well, we've talked to Carlos Conde, who has been an official going back as far as the Nixon administration. He's from South Texas, and he has recently written a column entitled, "Is Color Me Black the Latino Political Song?" Now, the question is, what are Latinos going to do, particularly Mexican Americans here in South Texas, going to do in the election? Because there's been a competition for jobs, I think, that has caused some friction between the black and Latino communities in the United States. Yeah. Carlos Conde, for example, says when he went to Washington, even for government positions and administration, there was competition between blacks and Mexican Americans.
Working within the Nixon White House.
Exactly. Back that far. And what he says, though, is that right now the polls are showing that Obama will get 70% of the Latino vote.
Compared to Hillary Clinton getting almost 2-1 in South Texas.
But Obama doing pretty well. But he thinks it's not that clear. He thinks that perhaps the Bradley effect will come in here. The Bradley effect was out in California when Tom Bradley, a black, was running for governor there, and they thought he was going to win. The polls showed he was going to win, but when the votes came in, he lost.
And that could have been a Latino-Hispanic vote of this kind in California, a big Hispanic state.
That's exactly the point, and I think there's
may not have been racism. It may have been because Latinos and Hispanics have been fighting for jobs and access to power for so long with African Americans.
It's not a racial issue so much as an economic one. I guess that's the bottom line.
And they see African Americans as competitors.
Exactly, as competitors, and then that's less likely to want to support an Obama who might give advantages to blacks as against Latinos.
Now, we're beginning to start the segment where we're going to be talking about the necessity of extending Interstate 37 all the way from Corpus Christi down to Brownsville to connect the two ports, the Port of Brownsville, Port of Corpus Christi. Politically, how does this region need to work as a region, Laredo, Corpus Christi, working as a triangle, going to Washington, going to Austin to try and get I-69, the extension of 37 in the first instance, fast-tracked?
Well, it's almost obvious that the representatives from this area need to work together. They need to put it up high on their agenda as the list of the things that they want to see accomplished, both in Austin and in Washington. We have Democrat representatives from South Texas, and in Washington, they're going to be in the majority. They may even have a Democratic president. They've got to be able to make their clout felt on this issue.
Now, we talked to Chet Edwards, who is a congressman from Waco, north towards the Dallas area, what he was going to do about trying to complete I-69, and in particular, would he be in support of the extension of Interstate 37 from Corpus Christi to the Port of Brownsville?
I just think highway infrastructure is crucial for our nation's economic strength and to help us keep jobs right here in the U.S. When the Panama Canal in the next few years is widened and deepened, that is going to cause an explosion of ship cargo. It will come through the Panama Canal into the Texas port. So I think that really ties into the importance of I-69 and could be very, very exciting for Corpus to the Valley area.
Now, Eddie, as the director of the Port of Brownsville and Mr. Chairman of the Brownsville Navigation District, Eddie's boss, you heard Chet Edwards, congressman on the Appropriations Committee, powerful congressman from Waco, explained that he thinks it'd be great to complete fast-track I-69, specifically because of the expansion online coming down the track as it relates to improving the Panama Canal. Why is the Panama Canal so important for the need and necessity, both of you, to try and interconnect these two ports with the intercoastal as efficiently and as quickly as possible?
The I-69 project, I think, without a doubt, is imperative simply because it will provide for a much more efficient and safe movement of goods. And that corridor between here and Corpus Christi is vital. I-69 essentially is going to parallel all the major seaports in the state of Texas. For Brownsville, it's not only the connection to Corpus Christi, but it's also the connection to Houston. So it is very important from that standpoint. And so consequently, as you begin to see a greater emphasis of moving cargo in and out of seaports because seaports are essentially intermodal centers. It provides you the alternatives necessary not only to overland but to rail, to water, to inland waterways, and so consequently the connectivity is already there. And providing for those connections amongst the seaports is just simply critical. It provides for, again, a much more efficient and safe movement of goods.
And expeditious.
Much more expeditious. Again, that's where the efficiency factor comes in. And
that speed very important in order to compete with
logistics, time is money. Absolutely.
And Ron, and I'll add that with the expansion of the Panama Canal, we have ships that are bringing in between 4,800 containers on board, and they're going to be able to bring ships through the Panama Canal that are bringing in over 12,000 containers, making transportation more efficient, and we have to be able to capitalize on that.
When is the expansion and improvement of the Panama Canal being planned to be completed and come online?
2015. So you're only talking about 7 years away. And as the Mr. Chairman indicated, you're going to see a significant shift of container traffic away from what is the west coast of the United States directly into ports in the Gulf as well as ports on the east side of the United States. So the Panama Canal factor, every port in the Gulf Coast is positioning itself to take advantage of that increase in that transshipment of goods from Asia through the Panama Canal into the Gulf of Mexico and into areas of the East Coast market. So you're going to see some certainly impact in terms of the bottleneck that occurs with 50% of the container traffic coming into the west coast of California.
To the economy and to everyone within the region as it relates to their jobs and their income, their homes' values, and so forth.
Ron, every container that comes through here, every ship that comes into the port of Brownsville, that means jobs for us here in the local economy. We have
and it'd be the same thing in Corpus Christi.
It'd be the same. Anywhere you have a ship coming in or any type of traffic going through, that means jobs, economic stimulus for that area. And so we want to have that I-69 going through here. We have a bottleneck on the west coast. Long Beach Port is just a bottleneck, and most of the traffic from there is now being diverted to Lázaro Cárdenas in Mexico.
You'll see on your screen, you will see the map of how the goods and services across the nation are moving, especially as it relates to Mexico, and explain to us what the audience is seeing and how this relates to the importance of fast track Interstate 69 and completion 37 Corpus Christi to Brown.
And as you can see from there, that Lázaro Cárdenas is on the west southwest part of Mexico, and there's a major highway coming up, as you can see, going up through Monterrey and then leading up to the valley. We need to have that I-69 corridor to be able to transfer all that traffic up the up to Corpus Christi and up to Houston and all the major areas. Otherwise, we're going to have a bottleneck. If we don't have an I-69 coming down to Brownsville, then all of that is going to have to be diverted elsewhere. We already have a bottleneck in Laredo. That's a huge amount of traffic going through there. We want to be able to divert some of that traffic going through here, creating more jobs and economic stimulus to our economy here in the valley.
Now, Mr. Port Director, as it relates to what Congressman Chet Edwards said about the importance of fast-tracking this interstate and providing an additional amount of infrastructure to both ports, how does that then tie in to the land ports, land bridges, Laredo south to Brownsville, who has seen a 300% increase of commercial truck traffic from NAFTA to today?
Well, if you really look, they complement one another. I mean, those inland ports are no different than the seaports. They're a magnet for that truck traffic. If you were to look in the Rio Grande Valley and consider the bridges in Brownsville and the bridges all the way up to Far and Los Indios, a lot of the traffic that crosses there will come to the port of Brownsville. Whether it's hazmat cargo, whether it's liquid cargo. You were talking about the NAFTA effect in the Rio Grande Valley and some of the environmental considerations. Well, part of that NAFTA effect was to establish a zone on the border for the use of low sulfur grade diesel on the border. Well, the majority of that fuel comes in through the port of Brownsville. And so consequently, that fuel is what is used to propel much of the truck traffic that occurs throughout the frontera, from Brownsville potentially all the way to Ciudad Juarez. So, consequently, all of that movement of goods, whether it's via truck or via rail or via inland waterway or via the water, it has an impact because it's all part of that trade chain, whether it's materials used for assembly or whether it's export of a finished product. It's all critical, and all of these components need to be tied together because it adds to the efficiency. It makes us competitive with other regions of the country, and it makes us competitive with other regions of the world.
I really can't believe that Barack Obama would do ultimately something to affect NAFTA and hurt the 5 million jobs in Mexico, because this is what he told me on a satellite interview as it relates to trying to help Mexico.
What we have to do is work with the Mexican government. We've got to improve economic development on their side of the border so that they're creating jobs and economic development that can provide prosperity for their people.
So, Tony, Barack Obama tells me he wants to improve the economy of Mexico, to improve jobs, so the people of Mexico don't have to come over here and try to get them gainfully employed in the United States of America. All in all, what have you seen on the program that you think the audience needs to take advantage of and be aware of as it relates to NAFTA and the completion of this interstate highway between the ports of Brownsville and Corpus Christi?
Well, first of all, a realization that 3/4 of the trade between the United States and Mexico comes through Texas. We know it affects the ports. We know it comes through Laredo. If anybody's been up in Laredo recently, and the folks in Laredo are certainly aware of the tremendous truck traffic that goes through there. The impact of the trade with Mexico is just enormous. And thus it's very critical for us, and I think we've seen that and expressed by elected officials as well on the program, of the need to follow through on continuing the NAFTA arrangement between the United States and Mexico. It can't be jeopardized at this time, this critical time where our economy is under some threat because of the crisis, the financial crisis that's been going on.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for joining us. Adios.